Of all the castles I have visited on the island of Sicily in Italy, the medieval marvel that is the Ursino castle was probably my favorite, and the largest. In September of 2024, I had the chance to visit the awe-inspiring city of Catania in Sicily, which is where the Ursino castle is located. And I've got to say, the location is stunning and daunting. The city of Catania lies at the foot of the largest active volcano in Europe, Mount Etna, and right next to the Mediterranean Sea. Never mind the centuries of war and intrigue, this castle has also witnessed volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, such dramatic ones, in fact, that the castle seems almost to have moved. It was originally built on a cliff overlooking the sea, but over time, the eruptions and earthquakes changed the landscape, and today, as you can see, the castle sits in the middle of the modern city, a whole kilometer from the coastline. The Ursino castle has a fascinating history, and with this video, I will try to share some of the highlights. It took 11 years to build the castle, and it was built by the famous Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick II. It was finally finished in the year 1250, so over 750 years ago. However, this was a chaotic time in Sicilian history. Frederick's father was the one who had first claimed the kingdom of Sicily for his Hohenstaufen dynasty, but he had died when Frederick was very young. So, when Frederick, once he was older, was reclaiming the island, he ordered the surrender or destruction of all non-royal castles, so all the castles of smaller nobles, which made sure that only his castles remained. Convenient. In this context, the Ursino castle emerged as one of the largest and most important castles on the island. Although Frederick II was also the King of Germany, so the Holy Roman Emperor, he actually grew up in Sicily and apparently spoke 6 languages and likely visited this castle. One of the most dramatic moments in the Ursino castle's history happened during a famous rebellion, the Sicilian Vespers. The year was 1295, so almost 50 years after Frederick II had died, and the island had come under the control of the French-speaking Angevins. A ferocious local revolt broke out in Sicily, called the Sicilian Vespers, which forced out the Angevins and led to a long war between the Angevins on the one side, who were based in Naples, and the Kingdom of Aragon, in today's Spain, on the other. 2 kings vying for control of Sicily. Eventually, though, it became clear that Sicily's ally, the Kingdom of Aragon, would no longer come to help. In fact, the Aragonese king had agreed to return Sicily to the hated Angevins. So, the Parliament of Sicily got together, right here, in fact, in the Ursino castle, and did something quite extraordinary, at least for medieval times. Against the Pope's wishes, they deposed the Aragonese king, rejected both Aragon and the Angevins, and instead they simply crowned their own king. In other words, a king of an independent kingdom of Sicily. Although the castle was briefly captured by his enemies in 1296, the new king of Sicily, Frederick III, who was actually the younger brother of the prior Aragonese king, managed to fend off several invasions, and in fact, Sicily remained independent for another 130 years. But not all was well in Sicily. Around 100 years after the Sicilian Vespers revolt that we've been talking about, so in 1392, the Ursino castle became the setting for a royal scandal. The Queen of Sicily, Maria, was kidnapped within the castle itself, as different feuding barons were fighting for her hand in marriage. Ultimately, this led to the kingdom's independence decreasing. By the 1600s, the Ursino castle had lost its military role, and instead was used as a prison. Amazingly, despite its age, it was one of the few buildings in Catania to survive both the devastating earthquake of 1693 and the volcanic eruption of 1669. It was during that eruption, in fact, that the castle's moat was filled with lava from Mount Etna, and the castle, once a seaside fortress, now became an inland fortress. Finally, in 1932, the city of Catania acquired the castle, restoring and transforming it into a museum. Today, the museum has a great collection of local ancient artifacts, including some very rare Sicilian inscriptions, which is one of the languages that existed in Sicily before the Greeks arrived. Today, the castle continues to have a cultural impact. For example, I am fairly certain that the Sicilian castle design, in the popular online game Age of Empires 2, is inspired by the Ursino castle. Have a look for yourself. Whatever the case, if you're fond of medieval history, I would certainly recommend a visit to this majestic castle. Not far from the Ursino castle, just 10 kilometers away, is the smaller, but equally fascinating, Norman castle at Acci, or, in Italian, il Castello Normanno di Acci. The Acci castle, which was reinforced by the Normans in 1076, is older than the Ursino castle, but, like the Ursino castle, it was also besieged and changed hands during the War of the Sicilian Vespers. Although the style is very different, this cliffside fortress can maybe help us imagine what the Ursino castle might have looked like when it was still located next to the sea. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Be well.